Hi there and welcome to this episode of Behind the Business with myself, Steve Swift from clientdirection.com and my good friend John.
Hello from skypelifecoach.uk.
Fantastic. And hopefully you've enjoyed the previous episodes we've done of giving you content and actionable points and a few bits of exercise and homework to help improve your business from where it is now to where ultimately you want it to be. And also not just the processes in the business, but also in here in your mind and your emotion and how it makes you feel being that business owner. Now, we talked last week about the topic of how you can handle the influx of orders or bookings in your business. And the reason why we're not showing you how to get the orders and the bookings first is because if you get a load of customers coming to your business saying, we want to buy from you, and you don't know how to handle that, then potentially you're going to fall foul and you're not going to give them the best service, and that can give you bad reviews, feedback, and you can lose a lot of money. So the idea is to flip it on its head and show you what to do when those orders come in. And then next week's episode, we're going to show you how you can actually get the traction to get that happening. So, John, do you want to start things off today with a little bit of an insight into what people might need to consider when that influx comes into the business and how they can handle it and be prepared for it mentally as well?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely, Steve. And this is going to be an exciting day for me because I've discovered a new toy, the screen share. So if you bear with me, people, just for a second while I figure this out. There we go. Now, what I will say is we are aware that some people are watching this on audio, listening to this on audio. And if that's you, then if you go to behindthebusiness.uk, you can get a link to these graphs. So I just want to talk a little bit about these four graphs. And really, we're going back to basics. And before we talk about how to cope with that influx of clients, I wanted to talk a little bit about what a product life cycle is and why that's important. So this first graph that you can see in front of you here is sales against, it's basically against time, but for some reason I've written sales over time, but we'll brush past that. As you can see there, you can see the shadow of me taking a photo of the graph as well. So not that this was put together and photographed about 10 minutes before we came into this, but the idea was there.
And I'm sure if there's any photographers listening to this or watching it, they can maybe give us some tips on how to take better pictures.
Please get in touch. Yeah. So what you've got on this graph is you've got four purple lines, and the four lines represent effectively either four products or four marketing cycles. So if you look at the first one thing that I'm particularly aware of is that when people are starting up a new business, and particularly if they're starting up an informational business or an online business, the product life cycle doesn't get talked about an awful lot. You basically can be led to believe that you put a product together, you launch it, and that is your sustainable income for the foreseeable future for X number of months, years, whatever. It's not necessarily the case. Every single product has its own life cycle, and you can see there that on this particular graph, if I can move the mouse here, you can see your product starts with 0 sales. It's a new product, you're doing a lot of marketing, you hit a sales peak, and then over time that sales peak drops off. That's why if you go to a supermarket, your favorite product every few months gets new packaging, because they're trying to tell you that there's something new about this. You need to rediscover it. So that's the first graph, and that's the first product life cycle. If you want a sustainable income, you need to be looking at what is the life cycle of your product. What are you going to do to either increase that life cycle or bring in a new product so that you've got sustainable, consistent income over time? And that's really what that graph represents. Anything you want to say on that graph, Steve?
No, I think it's quite straightforward, and just obviously for the people that are listening on audio only, there will be links obviously to all these graphs so you can look at them when you are in front of a computer or on your mobile device when you're not driving, obviously, so you can refer back to them as well. So, but I think it's important though for people to recognize that it's not I have a product or I have a service and that is it, and that's going to make my business last forever. People need to be aware, what else can you offer to keep that sustainability of interest from your existing customers. And also when you're attracting new customers, they might only need part of your main core business offering, but the additionals or the bonuses or the extras might actually be more interest and value to customers, because at the beginning of a customer inquiring and getting to know you as a business owner, they don't necessarily know everything you do, and you certainly don't know their position and what their pains are and their history that's affecting what's going to be their future. So I think to have all these different ways of doing almost like a rebranding every now and again and highlighting these points covers like what you're saying in this graph, taking on board about the supermarket and the cereal box, etc. It's almost reinventing, but not having to start from scratch, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And if we move on to the next graph here, you can see that this life cycle, what we've just been talking about, the product life cycle, that's amplified with certain types of businesses. And what you've got here on this graph is a potential life cycle or a potential marketing cycle, more accurately, for an online business, potential online business. And what you've got here on the bottom left, you can see this green line here. This represents your initial outlay, financial outlay, time outlay in your marketing. And that could be a varying amount of time, but it could be longer than you expect. And then what happens is you'll do something and you'll hit this point here. And this point here represents where people on a massive scale suddenly discover your offering, or you put an offering out there that resonates, and you immediately get a massive spike in sales. Now, for your business, you need to know what that massive spike in sales represents by way of number of client or whatever. But the important thing to notice is that it's hundreds of percent bigger than where you started from. Now, again, something that's not widely discussed particularly with online automated business models, is that automation doesn't take away your responsibility to your client, and the fact that there's going to be a huge increase in that client contact. And that client contact could be questions about your product. It could be returns from people that have changed their mind once they bought, whatever. You've got to have those things in place. How are you going to deal with those? And that's important to think about. It's really important to think about, because if you don't recognize that you're gonna have a period of time before that hits, and then when that hits, it could be a lot bigger and a lot quicker than you're expecting, that's where you're going to hit overwhelm. And that's something that we were talking about the other week. Now, with that, what I want to do is map that against the next graph, which this is adapted from the book The Dip by Seth Godin. And I can see Steve starting to smile there, because he's obviously aware of this book, and everybody should be. It's highly recommended. And this graph maps time across your energy and motivation with any new product or project. So we've moved away from specifically talking about business here, but we're using business as an example for this. So anytime you've got a major project or something new you're trying to learn or anything like that, this model applies. And what you can see here is you start off at the left-hand side, and once you've made a decision to do something, you immediately get a burst of energy and motivation. Now, that could last a day, it could last a month, it could last however long. But what tends to happen is you'll then hit a point where things aren't going as you expected, or there might be some work you need to do that you're not enjoying. It's the hard, boring work that the project requires, whatever, and you're going to start to hit this low, and you move into this dip. This is going to happen whether you recognize it or not at the moment. If you think back, this has happened with every project, everything you've done that's been major in your life. Steve does karate. I'm sure Steve will tell you that there's been points where he's gone, I can't get this, and then suddenly it clicks. Well, that bit where you go, I can't get this, I don't know what I'm doing right, I can't get it, that's the dip. And you have to move through it, because if you don't move through it, you teach your brain that you never move through it. And that becomes a limiting belief, it becomes a barrier. So you have to move through. And then once you've moved through, you can move out of that and you start to get your energy back, your motivation, things become a little easier. Hopefully you've hit that point in your business where it's shot up, you've got the client contact, and things become much more sustainable for you. But you have to remember that that dip exists. Now I'm going to take this a step further and show you that it doesn't just relate to where you've got a new project. Okay, your energy will rise and fall across a week, across a month, across a day. And you need to be aware of this. As a coach, one of the things that I deal with clients with a lot is you need to work out where your prime energy falls so that you can plan your work around it. And this, Steve, is the key to avoiding that overwhelm where you get huge amounts of work in all at once. Okay.
Yeah, and I think, that's the thing though, John, right there, what you just said, the overwhelming thing. And also the fact that you can get overload, and then that eventually ends with burnout.
Exactly.
You know, and I've seen this firsthand. Just to add a little bit more content at this point, and I'll hand back to you, John, is having worked with a number of business owners and seeing their staff. As soon as you walk into an office environment, for example, for one of the companies I've been working with, you can see straight away the people that aren't really doing anything and the people that have got the world weight on their shoulders, and they are already at burnout. You ask them a question, they look like the rabbit in headlights scenario, the vague. They're doing all this, and they can't give you a straight answer to the simplest of questions, such as, has this call been made? Has that email been sent? Who's doing that job on the board where there's no name against it? And it could have been up there for days, but the smallest little tasks aren't being done because they look huge. And, you know, that leads on to, I think, what you're going to say about your energy levels in the graph, that you need to make sure that you're not overloading one person as a business owner, and that everybody has an equal share based on their strengths and their abilities, obviously, to handle the complex as well as the simple processes in the business, so that everybody's energy levels remain slightly higher than somebody being at rock bottom and other people having lots of energy and can't understand why this person just can't get these simple tasks done that they've been asked for. So back to you, John.
Absolutely. So this graph that we're looking at now, I've called it the new project energy map because but it doesn't necessarily relate to new projects. This is my energy map. So this is the way that I tend to find my energy works. And you'll see there that on days 1 and 2, I'm high energy. So that might be, I'm coming into a new week, Monday and Tuesday, bang, that's where I'm at. I get tons of work done and it's quality work. Lots of my creative work is done in that time. Certainly a lot of the work that I do around talking with potential clients is done in those high energy days. But then what happens is I get a crash. And I'll get 3 days then where I probably don't want to talk to clients because my energy level is down. And it can take, if anybody's experienced this, and everybody has, it can take a bit of effort to pull yourself out of that energy drain, you know, and you need to be thinking about what are the things that get you out of that energy drain. But then it comes up again and it levels off for another couple of days and then it goes down again. Everybody has this, but not many people acknowledge it. Certainly, if you're used to working in a corporate environment, in a big office, it's not acknowledged at all. You're expected to be at this high energy level, sort of day 1, day 2 energy levels constantly. It's not sustainable. It's absolutely not sustainable. And this is why you get people who hate their jobs, who are overwhelmed with the amount of work. They can't cope with the amount of work because it's never talked about. But if you're running your own business, you can absolutely work around this, and you should, because it's important, because this can sabotage you. This with the previous graph together, those two things can sabotage you, because if you hit the dip on days 3 and 4, that's a double dip. Because if you come through the dip, but you're on day 3 and 4, you're still going to feel rough. Does that make sense? You've got 2 different energy fields, energy cycles working against each other at that point. So if you can plan around that and you can work out what your energy map is, you can work out where the dip is going to hit, and you can avoid that double dip of, oh, I really don't feel like doing this today. And the other reason this is so important is, if you go back to the second graph I showed, what happens if you hit that huge amount of customer client contact? If you get all of your sales on day 4, well, potentially the clients that you're speaking to are not going to get your best. They're not going to get the best service. You need to be working out, well, I think this is where my energy is going to hit, but also this is where my marketing is going to kick in, and try and plan it for the customer that comes to you on day 7 is going to have a very different experience the customer that comes to you on day 4, through no fault of your own. So if you can plan that the bulk of your customers come to you on day 7 on this graph, then everyone's a winner. And that's why this is important. And that's why, for homework, for me, I think people need to be looking at 2 things. What is your personal energy map? And you've got to be really honest about this. I know I bang on every week about you've got to be really honest with yourself, but this is absolutely key. It's advanced stuff, this, because this is what's going to drive your business and stop you sabotaging it. So I want you to, over the space of probably a couple of weeks, this will take, work out what your energy map is, what your energy map is in the day, and what it is across those days. And also think about, what is your likely product life cycle? If you've got a product in mind, which you might not have yet, but if you have, or whenever you get that clarity, think about what that life cycle is likely to be. And that is going to take you going away and doing some research. But I think that's really important. And I think, Steve, if I can figure out, if you've got nothing to add to those graphs, I don't know, you might have, I'll work out how to unshare my screen.
Yeah, I think all the actual graphs there that John's just gone through, obviously there's quite a bit of content there, extremely valuable and so powerful content, that's why we're going to keep the links on the behindyourbusiness.uk website for you to get that, and I'm sure there'll be a way of putting a link on the YouTube channel to refer back to that as well. So there's going to be multiple ways, if you're listening just in audio in your car at the moment, then, or just walking the dog or whatever it is you're doing, sort of thing, rather than watching this video, then do refer back to them and take that time. And like John says, and it's quite right, you've got to be really honest with when you're analyzing yourself. And it can be really hard for some people to do, to actually critique yourself and actually be honest with how you are actually feeling. Finding out where your areas of tiredness and exhaustion actually are, and when does that kick in based on the workload that you've had before that. Because then, like John said and showed quite well in those graphs, that there is a pattern, and if you can understand that pattern of yourself, you can then manipulate the parts that you are in control of, i.e. when you're launching a marketing campaign, when you're putting an ad out there, when you're just releasing out into the public domain or to your targeted clients a particular offer, a new product launch, a rebranding, like the cereal packet scenario John mentioned. You align that so that the results kick in when you're back up on a high energy level rather than on a low energy level. So, because like John said, the last thing you want is people coming into your business when you're at your low energy, because the tonality in your voice will be all wrong. Your body language, if it's face-to-face on those occasions where that can be done, then people are going to get a different experience. They're going to straight away know that either you don't you don't come across as the caring and investing in their well-being and to give them the best service possible, to serve their needs, to resolve their pain with your ultimate and only solution, and that's why they want to purchase from you. That is important, John.
That's right. And I think the other thing that's important to mention, which is, I think we all have a tendency to forget this, but if you're setting up your own business, you're ahead of the game with this. You've got an opportunity to plan your life and plan your income in a way that most people don't get to do. And it's a privilege to be able to say, I can take the time to look at the way my body and my mind work together, and I can plan the rest of my life to make life easy and make life fun. And that's not to say there's no hard work involved, but the difference is it's for you, not for somebody else. And it almost feels like if you've got the opportunity to do that and to take the moment and say, how do I work? How can I do this in a way that means I'm not fighting against myself? If you don't do that, you're doing yourself a disservice, because it's a lot of work running your own business, regardless of the business model, regardless of anything else. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of responsibility. And it's the responsibility from the point of view of a coach that's going to be the thing that trips you up. Because if you're not ready for it, if you're not used to it, if you're used to somebody else taking that responsibility and saying, why haven't you done this? Yeah, like in the example that you gave earlier on, you speak to somebody in a corporate environment and you're saying, who's doing this job? Who's doing that job? Who's taking responsibility for this? Well, that conversation doesn't exist if you're running your own business. It doesn't matter whether you've got employees. It doesn't matter whether you're an army of one. The buck stops with you. So you might as well enjoy it. And the way to enjoy it is to really understand how you work so that you're not having those inner battles with yourself, because everybody does. Everybody does, but we don't like to admit it. And particularly if you come from a corporate background, you're taught not to admit it. You're taught to look calm under pressure. It's geared up to increase burnout in everybody, because to admit that you need to look at something in a different way in those environments is seen as a weakness. And that's totally the opposite to what it really is. So while you're in this position where you're looking at changing your life, you're looking at moving away from that and potentially taking control of your own destiny, do it in a way that's going to be enjoyable, that's going to support you for the long term, that's not going to burn you out. That's going to say, I can get this work done without turning myself into a vegetable by the time I'm 50 or whatever, or 30 or however old you are now, you know. But that's not talked about very well in the wider scheme of things. And I think that's why I was really pleased that you suggested this as a topic, because that's what makes what we're talking about different. These are important things that Steve has asked us to talk about, which are going to make all the difference to you, and it makes all the difference against somebody who says the important thing is to make thousands and thousands of pounds. Well, that's all very well if you're not in a position to enjoy it, you know. So enjoy it and make sure you do, but set things up so that you don't have to worry about it as you go along. Sorry, Steve, that was a bit of a rant, but I think it's really important. I really do, and I see a lot of clients, and I've worked with a lot of clients in the past who haven't understood this, and it trips people up time and time again. And if you trip up once, you don't want to get into that cycle. So break the cycle before it starts. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it is something that people, they get into the situation, they find themselves in that moment, but they don't know how to get out of it because they don't understand the process that you've just clearly gone through, John. And because it's not talked about openly and honestly, or as much as maybe what it should do to support those people in business, whether you are a paid member of staff or you are the owner of the business, like John says, the buck stops with you. And if you don't know how to control that, if you don't even know how to, before control can take place, recognize it, understand it, and apply what needs to be applied to avoid that bottom energy level crash at the wrong time for your business as that spike kicks in of sales, then you're going to be in trouble, and that's not a good place to be. So that's why this topic is something I was really keen to get out there to everybody to see, to hear, to listen. And John, with your expertise and the demonstrations, I think that's really going to help put people on the map of an emotional positive direction with regards to as they grow the business and handle, the topic today, handle that influx of orders or bookings. And I think just to cover the point of, because we've talked very much about the inner person of how do you emotionally and mentally prepare yourself. We haven't really touched on the process of what you would put in your business to get those orders as they come in and how to handle them. And that's a very simple thing to do. So it'll only take a few minutes to share with people how to do that. There's a couple of ways of doing it, but the simplicity is this. When the orders come in, and we're going to talk next week about how you can attract those orders coming in, is first of all, when those orders first come into your business, where do they go? Who is the first point of contact for that? Now, it could be it's a phone call, it's an inbound call that you're taking. Is the person that's taking them calls at a higher or low energy level for when those calls come in? And what can you do as a business owner, or if it is you taking that call, being the business owner, what can you do to prepare yourself so that your energy level is high when that call comes in? Again, because it's a phone call, there's three ways that we communicate. We use body language, we use words, obviously, and we use tonality. Now, when you're on the phone, your body language, which is the biggest way that we communicate with everybody, it is the biggest percentage of how we demonstrate how we feel and what we're trying to impress upon to people. You haven't got that on the phone. So you've only got the words and the tonality. Words you can script, you can work on that. But it's the tonality that you use with people. And I've worked in businesses where I've had to get on the phone where literally one call was the marketing UK director for L'Oreal. And they were not happy. 5-minute conversation turned them into thinking we were the best thing since sliced bread because of the tonality I used and also the words that I used in conjunction on the phone. So you need to make sure that when you are taking that call, you've hyped yourself up. Just putting a smile on your face will come down the telephone line. It will make such a difference because when you smile, your voice naturally changes into a more of a happier state. So that person gets the best from you. If it's more of a digital inbound of order coming in, then maybe you need to look at a process of using a CRM. And there's many CRMs out there. I could talk for hours about the different ones. You need to obviously find the right one that's going to fit your business. And I'm a big advocate of making sure that whatever I suggest to people, it fits their business and not a one-fits-all scenario, because it doesn't work like that. Certainly when it comes to CRMs, some people might just
sorry, Steve. Don't want to talk over you, but just for people that don't know, can you just tell people what a CRM is?
Yeah, basically it's a contact record management system. So it's where all the data, all the information about a prospect, someone that's shown an interest in your business and has reached out and has connected with you either over the phone or digitally by filling in maybe a form online where it's usual name, telephone number, email address. And if there's a drop-down box of what is it that interests you? Are you looking to get more leads into your business? Are you looking to improve your staff's ability to understand processes? Is it something more like what John deals with, which is that energy levels and that life coaching side of things? When that comes into your business, and that could also be having a conversation over the phone and just typing in the information into boxes onto this CRM platform, which is basically it's a way of it's putting all the information into a database for you to go back at and be able to find the information. So that's what a CRM in the very broadest and basics of terms is. It's a way of taking people's information and putting it digitally somewhere where you can refer back to. And CRMs can work in multiple ways. They can be very good for pipeline and digital pipeline as well. And there's two very, very big differences between just having a sales pipeline and having a digital pipeline. And I'll go into that, I think, on another episode, because that is a beast in itself. But it's a way of getting the people's details initially, giving them the biggest answer to the problem they've got, so that it reassures them that they're in the right place and speaking to the right people, and then how you progress that forward. And that is the process of handling that lead. That initial contact is just the very tip of the iceberg. It's then the nurturing of that, the rapport, the conversation that takes place from that initial hello, how can I help? Or thanks for calling today, or whatever it might be. Then you need to make sure that's mapped out. And if you don't have a clear direction to take people in and to handle that, and it will go off on different tangents, because people's circumstances and situations, depending on what your business type is, will vary. You know, it could be something simple from people wanting to get the teeth realigned. It could be people that's looking for help with the business accounting. It could be a purchase of, I don't know, a barbecue or a hot tub or anything like that. But it's, well, what kind of barbecue do you want? What do you tend to grill on? You know, what do you use? What do you tend to cook? Do you need a hot plate, or is it just all griddle based? You know, things like this. And that's where your sales pipeline process to handle that influx of initial order has to have clarity. Because the moment you're on the phone and someone's looking to invest in you, their hard-earned money, and you start saying, yeah, I think that's not a good word to use, is not good use of words neither. You need to be the control. You need to have the expertise and the knowledge to help people with a problem and make sure that you are still in control as the expert, to reassure them that you can deal with the problems that they have. And that's why it's important to have that process in place. And what I can do is look at doing an exercise on mapping out a process in a future episode.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So that you can do that. But it's just understanding that you have got something in place. And if you haven't, like John said before, be honest with yourself, look at your business and say, and write it down. Just get a piece of paper and say, right, when the phone rings, or when an email comes in, or when that application form online gets filled in and I receive it, what do I do with it? And follow that right the way through. And you've got to see it from that initial first response right the way through, solving the problem, communicating that with somebody, banking the money. And that isn't where it ends. You've then got to follow up with that person. It's that customer care call. Are you happy with anything? Is there anything else we can help you with today? And then nurture it. And then, as long as they are happy with that and they give feedback, ask for a review. It's great publicity for you. Third-party endorsements. You know, there's Google reviews. There's reviews you can leave on Facebook if you have a Facebook page, which if you haven't, you really ought to consider having one. LinkedIn, again, you can use LinkedIn and get people to endorse you for your skill sets on LinkedIn, a great powerful tool there. And we can touch on LinkedIn on another episode as well. Trustpilot, you know, there's these paid services as well. So there's many ways that you can then ask people, say, would you be happy, based on what you've just said, the experience you've had with me, because you've handled that initial influx of order, you've taken them through a wonderful journey, you've solved the problem for them, you've nurtured them all the way, they see you as the expert and trust you and believe in you. Are you happy to actually leave a review? Fantastic. Is there anybody else you think would benefit from what I've helped you with as well? And getting that referral and recommendation, which is a great way to build your business as well. And referrals, recommendations, there's another topic there we can obviously discuss. But just make sure that emotionally and mentally you understand the energy cycle that John mentioned, and also understand that you need to have a clear process from initial inquiry coming in right the way through. And what options are there? What tangents could it go off on? Look at the objections people could have at different parts of the process. And again, objection handling is something we'll talk about on a future episode as well, and the selling cycle and things like this. But just those two things that John discussed with the exercise that he said to you to be honest with, and obviously the charts, which you get the links to, and then also the process itself. As long as you have those two dialed in, really, really dialed in well, then you are then preparing yourself and your business for the topic we'll discuss next week, which is how you attract and get that from that energy of that timeline of preparing everything, get it ready, then woof, that spike in sales.
Yeah.
You're ready to handle it, but how do you get that spike? And that's what we're going to be talking about next week for you. John.
Excellent. Well, looks like we're coming up on half an hour. So
hey.
So that's timed very well for us, hasn't it? For those who haven't noticed yet, we tend to be a little bit hit and miss on our timings, but I think we've done pretty well today. So and I think that hopefully people find that useful. Certainly what you've just gone through there, and talking about the future sessions as well. Really, really useful content. And as ever, we are just on the end of an email. The links are below the video. You can get us, or you can get this podcast through your usual podcast streaming service. I know we're through iTunes now as well. So you can go, and if you've enjoyed this, please subscribe on YouTube. Please give us a rating on iTunes. Just going back to what Steve was saying there about asking for ratings. And if you've got any questions, get in touch with us. We are nothing if not approachable.
Absolutely. We're here to serve the needs of your business and you. Topics of conversation, if there's anything in particular that's pressing at the moment with your business, get in touch, like John says, using the email links below in this video, if you're on YouTube, etc. We'll be happy to discuss the topic. You can do it anonymously, like I said in previous episodes as well. Drop us an email, say, look, I just need this help. Don't want to go on camera, so I don't want to come on the Zoom session. I'd rather not, be identified. That's absolutely fine. A lot of my clients I work with, people would never know I've worked with them because they don't like to be seen that they need the help, but they do need the help. So, keeping everything anonymous is absolutely fine. So like John says, give the video a like, shows a little bit of love there, drop us some comments in there, share it with people if you think that they would benefit from the content on this episode and previous episodes we've done. We'll keep the ball rolling. We're trying to keep it to about 30 minutes because we know time's valuable. We're very thoughtful of your time. We appreciate your time, and I can't wait to see you and speak with you next week, virtually, obviously. And the topic will be about how we're getting that spike in your business for the sales. So I can't wait to have a good conversation with you and maybe get some diagrams going, just to give some visuals to help on that as well.
Excellent. I'll see you next week.
Take care.